Alright, PDL week 4. By the end of this video, we'll be halfway through the season. My brain's a little scrambled from recording things out of order, but hey, should also be done with that after this. Of course, the Halifax Masquerade Men already, the week 4 set is already up in Monday's video, so you can check out how things went between us and the Foraging Furrets over there if for some reason you haven't yet. But before we jump into the rest of the replays, I do have finally the standings as of the end of week 3. This table normally also appears in Monday's video, but this week it wasn't ready yet. But here is what it looked like before that Masquerade Men Furret set and before the other sets that I'm about to get into right now. 4 teams still undefeated: the Ontario Minccinos, Winchester Walreins, Big Mode Bellibolt, and Pendragon United, with the Minccinos and the Walreins both not having dropped a single game yet this season, never mind a set. And I don't think they play each other in the regular season. I think I checked that, so if they keep going like this, we might have to finally find out what that tiebreaker is for seeding beyond just game differential. Both of these teams have, nobody's been able to even nick them so far. The Bellibolt are right there behind them. They've almost gone undefeated in games. Looks like they've only lost 1. Pendragon United also right behind them as well. Halifax Masquerade Men not currently sitting in a playoff spot. Again, this is before Monday's set, but a lot of good teams still trying to find their first or second win so far this season, so a lot still to unfold. But before we get into that, there are some trades, or one big trade if you prefer to look at it that way, because unfortunately the original coach of the Southern-style Grovyles has had to step away from the rest of this PDL season. I don't know why, it's probably none of my business, but that means the Grovyles do have a replacement coach for the rest of the season. That replacement coach is PDL founder Shadow, who largely has stepped back from his responsibilities in the league but can't quite seem to quit this place. Of course, I was his replacement coach with the Alaskan Absols at about the same point in Season 6. Since then, Shadow has become, I believe, a PDL champion as one of 2 coaches with last season's, whatever that team was called that won Season 7. I believe he's a reigning champion right now, and he is now stepping into this Grovyles situation. So, just like when I was his replacement coach, he was given a special opportunity to make some changes because he was inheriting a draft that was not his own. So you're about to see some free agent trades involving Pokemon that were not in free agent spots. That's normally not allowed, but there is precedence in the PDL to make a one-time allowance for some of that when a new coach takes over, so that they can make the team somewhat their own and make sure that they're comfortable with it. The Southern-style Grovyles have, to that end, swapped out Jumpluff, Dragalge, and Brionne for Medicham, Masquerain, and Alolan Graveler. It is an interesting set of moves. I can say, as a future opponent of this team, keeping an eye on my own matchups for the second half of the season, it definitely shakes up my approach to this. I was feeling pretty good about just throwing my Umbreon at this team, and let's just say I have different ideas now that we'll deal with at the appropriate time. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. So Jumpluff was, of course, this team's Tailwind setter, and was able to also set up Sunny Day for itself to outspeed things with Chlorophyll, but also to get Charmeleon going with Solar Power. Charmeleon, of course, much weaker than Charizard, but maybe an adequate substitute for this format. We would find out over the course of the season. I'm sure there are still Pokemon on this team that get Sunny Day. For one thing, I'm pretty sure Charmeleon itself does, but also I think Riolu gets priority Sunny Day. They still have Sawsbuck to take advantage with Chlorophyll, so it may be that they didn't think that Jumpluff was especially necessary compared to some of the other options available. And I do think that Medicham as an S-tier Pokemon, I think, instead, does bring a lot to the table, giving them sort of another form of strong physical offense beyond just coaching Riolu with not as strong Pokemon like Scrafty and Sawsbuck, but also, again, making it hard for Pokemon like Umbreon to just shut down the Calyrex Psy-Spam mode and overpower Charmeleon and so on. So I think Medicham makes a lot of sense for this team. I think that's the right way to look at this. Not, did they really need Jumpluff, but Medicham brings a lot to the table here, and if they wanted to pick it up, then Jumpluff was what had to go, because although the free agent rules are relaxed some for a one-time swap like this, the tier list and the points budget and everything are still in effect. Dragalge for Masquerain is a pretty interesting swap. Dragalge, I think, was a great value draft pick in the B tier. Really phenomenally strong Pokemon for this format, all the way down there in B. In fact, as soon as Dragalge was dropped, I thought about picking it up myself, not because it fits especially well into my team, I don't think it does, but just because I think it's so good. I did not do that, but I thought about it. Masquerain, obviously I like as my team's mascot, but what does it bring to the table? Well, I guess it's the new Tailwind setter. It probably gets Tailwind. It has Intimidate, it has some other support techs, it has Quiver Dance, so there are a few different ways they can play with Masquerain. At face value, I don't really see the reasoning for dropping Dragalge, but there's a lot that Masquerain can do. We'll find out over the course of the season. The Alolan Graveler, much more mysterious to me. It does get Wide Guard, so maybe they really value that for some reason. Obviously, it's hard for me to guess from my Monday morning quarterback seat over here, my Friday afternoon quarterback seat. But I don't know. Brionne was kind of interesting for this team because, of course, it could set up the Swamp Pledge combo with Grovyle. In fact, with those two and Charmeleon, they had access to every Pledge combo, although the Swamp is usually most valuable, and they do still have the Sea of Fire because they had kept the other two starters. I really don't know what Alolan Graveler brings to the table other than Wide Guard. And I don't know why it's more valuable here than Brionne, but maybe we'll find out over the rest of the season. We'll probably see at least one of these Pokemon make its season debut this week, maybe even 2 or 3. But yeah, we'll find out. And it's going to be an interesting rest of the season for the Southern-style Grovyles, as it always is, when, even with the ability to make these changes, someone steps into a draft that they didn't pick and tries to make it work. I had a lot of fun doing that, you know, when Shadow was on the other side of this interaction with the Absols. We'll see how it goes for Shadow as the replacement coach. One last thing before we go to the replays, and that is that there are once again only 6 sets to cover this week. I don't exactly know what the situation is, but I do know that the Tiny Crowns have officially been given a 2-0 win over the Varsity Farmboys without the set having been played, so without there being any replays for us to watch. I'm not sure exactly what is going on with that. We'll find out in future weeks, but those two teams will not be appearing in this video, is the main point. But let's go check on everyone else. And this time it really does start with the very first set that was played this week, as the Halifax Masquerain Men 3-week streak of playing in the first set, chronologically every week, has been broken. The Iridescent Terapagos and Dragos Children did not wait around this time, and we'll see what they came up with for each other. I say fairly quickly, they could have been building way in advance for all I know. It's week 4. Dragos Children look like they've brought a lot of Trick Room stuff with the Dusclops, the Galarian Slowbro, the Magcargo, which we saw put in a lot of work under Trick Room in, I don't remember, a past week. And then the duo of Sphylis and Dipplin is pretty interesting. Obviously, they're both Dragon types, and Dipplin also a Grass type, so they can stand up pretty well to the Electric spam that is available on the other side, as we do in fact see 3 different Electric types of the Terapagos. And also they can take water type attacks from the Tauros. The close combat into Sphylis is still a problem. And the Oricorio is not here to keep Dipplin in check. But the other reason, and more important, that Dipplin and Sphylis is an interesting duo. Okay, also only one of them can hold the Eviolite, but it's probably on Dusclops anyway. But the real interesting thing is that Sphylis gets Hustle, I believe. Yeah, actually that's its only ability. So its physical attacks are powered up, but they have a chance to miss, and now I understand why Dragos Children has both that and Dipplin. Of course, Dipplin with Super Sweet Syrup can create openings for its Sphylis to land those boosted attacks. So if we see those two Pokemon at all, they'll probably be brought together, probably in a Trick Room mode, I would think, with Dusclops or Slowbro. I guess Slowbro could be the Trick Room setter as well. I'm sure Dusclops is a Trick Room setter. Slowbro could also be one. And we'll see if Magcargo gets mixed in there as well. And then there's the Cleavor, which has just been a powerhouse for this team throughout the season. On the Terapagos side, like I said, we do see Pincurchins setting Electric Terrain for Alolan Raichu. So Alolan Raichu will go faster than anything else in this matchup, although it's not going to have a fun time in Trick Room probably. We'll see if they have a way to shut that down. The Pikachu is also here. The Clefable might be a problem for those Dragon types, but it has to watch out for Pokemon like Magcargo and Slowbro. The Tauros has been, of course, great for the Terapagos throughout the season, and we do see Meditite coming off the bench. Meditite does get pure power, so I talked up Medicham earlier as a physical powerhouse threat. Meditite is obviously smaller and weaker, but it could have an Eviolite. Pikachu probably doesn't want that because it gets the Life Ball. So yeah, Meditite might be able to stick around and do some damage. One way to find out. Let's jump right in. So we see Dusclops leading with Kleavor against Pincurchin and Meditite. So we are going to see the Meditite immediately. Dusclops with Frisk, of course, an ability that's only good in closed team sheet, but this is closed team sheet. Shows that it's Assault Vest Pincurchin and Eviolite Meditite. So okay, Meditite will be a little bit tricky to remove quickly. And yeah, the Assault Vest Pincurchin is interesting. Of course, Thinkboy brought Choice Band Pincurchin against me in week 1, so we know that he's willing to experiment with his Pokemon sets. And I'm sure it has something creative to throw at the opponent, but we see a Stone Axe into Pincurchin immediately, does big damage. And Meditite goes for Skill Swap, giving, I assume, pure power to Pincurchin. Also, I didn't clock until now, it's not Electric Surge Pincurchin. Oh, unintentionally. Okay, I see the chat now. It's Lightning Rod Pincurchin, but it's not supposed to be. But yeah, now it's pure power Pincurchin. It's going to land a big Throat Chop into this Dusclops and fail to deny Trick Room. That did a lot of damage. Pincurchin is, I mean, Pincurchin's attack stat is not terrible, right? Like, it's not good, but you'd expect it to do a ton of damage with pure power. But Dusclops is just so bulky, and I'm sure it has an Eviolite. Yeah, it was an interesting play to, I think, try to deny the Trick Room, but not working out in the end. Trick Room is up. Of course, Kleavor is faster than both of these Pokemon, so it's a little bit awkwardly positioned, but we can assume, I think, well, no matter what's in the back, it's going to be slower than most of what Thinkboy has, except, of course, Pincurchin is extremely slow. We see Applin switch in, we see the Super Sweet Syrup. Applin takes a Throat Chop pretty well, and Pincurchin drops his Stone Axe. So the Terapagos lose their slowest Pokemon there, but also Meditite reverses the Trick Room, just as I was about to say that. Tauros comes in, we'll probably see it Intimidate Kleavor. Nope, doesn't have Intimidate. I think it's unlikely that it has Anchor Point on this team. Actually, I think I read in the Discord that it has Cud Chew. This was played a while ago, but I think I remember that correctly. Anyway, Trick Room Meditite is a fun tech, I agree. Skill Swap and Trick Room, so much for the Meditite doing damage, as it looks like he's running a support set. Kleavor goes Terra Grass to help deal with the Tauros, I'm sure, and lands a Trailblaze. Okay. Trailblaze into Tauros. This is another speed control option then for Drago's Children. The Trick Room stuff was shut down, at least for now, but the Kleavor is able to go fast. But into Terra Steel Tauros, it's not doing a lot of damage with the Trailblaze. Takes a Wave Crash. That does a fair bit. And Meditite taunts Applin. So Meditite showing 3 status moves so far. Does it have an attack at all? I don't know. I also don't know what the Applin is trying to do here. Maybe that was supposed to catch Dusclops switching back in or something. But also, maybe the Applin has a status move to worry about. I don't know what Applin does other than, like, Syrup Bomb and maybe Dragon Pulse. But it actually does just go for Giga Drain and crit Meditite. So Meditite, again, taking that pretty well with the Eviolite. This was crit damage, and it did just over half. And we see a Stone Axe into Tauros. Tauros being worn down, but the Steel typing is helping it out here as Close Combat knocks out the Kleavor. And Meditite Close Combat. Of course, Meditite does not have pure power anymore. It does have an attack, but it's not going to do very much damage. And with the defense drop, or special defense drop, a second Giga Drain almost knocks it out. It survives with 1%. Galarian Slowbro is the 4th Pokemon for Drago's Children. It gets blasted by a Wave Crash, but survives. But gets taunted, so both these Pokemon are taunted now. Meditite drops, but it's done a great job of preventing the Trick Room. That said, Tauros also drops to a Slowbro Flamethrower here, and so the Terapagos are already down to their last Pokemon. It's Clefable. Shadow Ball knocks out the Slowbro. What's Applin going for? Leaf Storm. So it has Leaf Storm and Giga Drain. Leaf Storm does almost half Clefable, not quite. Of course, Applin now lowers its special attack, and it cannot switch out and reset that because there just aren't enough Pokemon left. We see it as Life Orb Clefable. Running Magic Guards, that's why it's not taking Life Orb damage. We didn't see that earlier. It knocks out the Shadow Ball with a Dusclops. It knocks out the Dusclops with a Shadow Ball. Takes that Leaf Storm pretty well. Applin further weakening itself, and Moonblast will one-shot Applin with a crit, but I think Dusclops has the Eviolite, so I don't know if that mattered. Life Orb Clefable. Yeah, so I like when I ran Reuniclus in Season 6, and I almost always had a Life Orb on it, because Magic Guard prevented the recoil damage. I don't remember exactly the fine details of how the interaction works, but... Well, actually, I don't think this one's that complicated. It's not like sheer force and Life Orb. You just don't take Life Orb recoil if you have Magic Guard. So the Life Orb Clefable coming in clutch there. And yeah, Draco's Children went pretty... Well, they didn't... I was going to say they went pretty hard for the Trick Room mode. That's really mostly true at preview. When they have like 5 pretty clear Trick Room Pokemon. But the Kleavor tried to go fast. It just got blown up by the Tauros. The Tauros terastallizing on the same turn as the Kleavor really did a lot for it there. But we'll see what they come up with to deal with that. As the Trick Room mode was really well shut down by that Meditite in Game 1. Game 2, we see Clefable and Pikachu leading against Phyllis and Dipplin. So here's that duo that I was talking about. Dipplin will land the Super Sweet Syrup. Of course, they can switch out and reset the drop, but maybe there's some opportunity cost to that as well. But otherwise, they can take boosted attacks from Phyllis, and it doesn't have to worry about hustle misses. Or, I don't know the exact value. There's less worry, at least. But we do see the Tauros switch in for Pikachu. We see Citrus Berry on the Tauros. We probably saw that already. Phyllis goes Terra Poison immediately and lands a Poison-type Terra Blast into Clefable. It does big, presumably hustle-boosted damage, but it doesn't quite KO. And Clefable, Moonblast Dusclops, good damage. Drops to a Terra Blast. So the Phyllis is putting in work here. Tauros doesn't quite get the KO into Dusclops. Trick Room is now available to children. Trick Room is available to children if they clicked it this turn, and they did. But here's the Pincurchin. Gonna be slower than I think anything. Certainly underspeeds the Dusclops here. Lands a Zing Zap into a double resistance. Doesn't do very much, but hey, this Phyllis got out of there. And Pincurchin, well, okay, that Thunder Punch was probably targeted into Tauros, but Pincurchin perhaps benefiting from having the wrong ability by mistake here as it redirects that away, and nobody takes any damage from it. Wave Crash doesn't do much to Dipplin either, so Dipplin got a pretty nice switch in there, but there's the Terra Steel Tauros. We see Haze Dusclops, but that's not... Dusclops just doesn't seem well positioned to do very much here. I wonder whether Thunder Punch is its only attack. The Dipplin's getting worn down, it's poisoned, it's taking big hits. This Violet switches back in with the Slowbro. The Pincurchin's not doing a whole lot of damage, but being able to poison things with the Poison Jab is nice. We see Tauros almost knock out Phyllis with a Wave Crash. And then eat its Citrus Berry. Phyllis is out of there. The Trick Room turns are ticking down, I mean they're almost gone. Dusclops is back in, it's going to drop to an Aqua Jet. That Throat Chop does reasonable damage to Slowbro. Of course, Pincurchin doesn't have pure power this time. As I didn't bring Meditite, instead we got Pikachu and Pincurchin against Slowbro and both dragons. Well, Dipplin... It's Phyllis isn't a dragon anymore, but both dragons still there for Draco's Children. Pikachu and Pincurchin, no electric terrain, but they stalled out the Trick Room and they wore these Pokemon down. Knockoff, don't know if the crit mattered, wouldn't bet on it. Gets rid of the Slowbro. And we see that it was Electric Seed Slowbro, so that would, of course, have gotten boosted defense, and it would have been helped into the knockoff twice over, because it would have had boosted defense and not had an item anymore, if Pincurchin had the correct ability. So the Iridescent Terapagos really benefiting from that Team Builder mix-up there. It's not too often you see something like that. Assault Vest Pincurchin takes that Draco Meteor just fine. Dipplin is out of here, and it's all up to Phyllis now. Outrage. One-shots Pikachu, but Pincurchin closes the game out. My accident ability saving me, exactly like I just said. The unintended Lightning Rod Pincurchin absolutely coming through for its team here. No Meditite needed to close this out in 2 games. Iridescent Terapagos take this one. And we go now to Alberta Applin taking on Pendragon United. There's something I find very pleasant about the colors of these teams right now. The Applin have a lot of red and like orange, brown, and green, and then there's a lot of blue over here, and there's Crawdont. But in terms of actual analysis, I mean, it's a sun mode from the Applin as usual. We see the Tropius. I think I do know what ability it has, but all of its abilities benefit from the sun. We see Flareon and Quilava getting access to boosted Fire-type damage. Ivysaur probably running Chlorophyll. Quilava or Flareon, I think Flareon gets Lava Plume. Could have Lava Plume to set up the Darkspawn's well-baked body, and that could help Darkspawn stand up to threat Pokemon like Crawdont and Rhydon. So it's a little bit tricky to position around Pelipper, even Pachirisu to an extent. But the Darkspawn could put in work if it gets the positioning just right. It could even go for a big body press into Glaceon. And then Breloom is here. I can see it creating openings for its teammates with take your pick of Spore, Mach Punch, even Grass Stab into something. On Pendragon United's side, we do see Pelipper and Crawdaunt looking to be a powerful offensive rain duo again. I assume Pachirisu redirecting things away from them. I don't remember whether the Arcanine or the Applin. I don't remember whether the Alberta Applin have an electric type, so I'm not sure whether the Rhydon is here for Lightning Rod purposes, but it is very threatening into the massive fire types that they have anyway, and with the right Terra type, it could help into Ivysaur and Tropius. And then, yeah, the Glaceon is here. That's very interesting. And the Mischievous. Don't know what they're here for. Let's see. Okay. We do see Pachirisu leading with Crawdaunt against Tropius and Breloom. Crawdaunt just protecting immediately as Pachirisu goes for a Nuzzle. We have seen the Pachirisu spread paralysis like crazy throughout the season so far. No wonder opponents have started bringing Covert Cloak more consistently into this team. At least that was how it looked last week when I think there was a Covert Cloak or a Choreo. I think that was last week. Anyway, Tropius does get paralyzed. No Covert Cloak. Crawdaunt avoids Spore, and Tropius is fully paralyzed. Unfortunate for it. Breloom will not be paralyzed because it's running a Toxic Orb with Poison Heal. So, of course, that protects it from other status, but also get passive recovery from the poison instead of taking damage. Crawdaunt shows that Terra Flying that we've seen a few times already. Strong into these two grass types, of course. Pachirisu will redirect a Spore away, and we see that it has Safety Goggles, so Breloom gets no opportunity to put anything to sleep and just gets wiped out by this flying Terra Blast. No poison recovery this game either. Will Tropius move this time? It does. It sets Tailwind. Hard for it to benefit from that when it's paralyzed, but Flareon here might. We see it's Air Balloon Flareon covering for the Rhydon, I think, probably. And I guess just random Terra Ground, maybe, although I don't know. With all this grass and fire spam on this team, I don't know. I don't think I played them this season. It would be interesting to figure out my Terra types into this one. Well, the Terra Rock last week put in a lot of work, and this Flying Crawdaunt might as well. We'll see. Anyway, Crawdaunt protects on a Flareon Heat Wave. So Flareon didn't Terrasilize. We know it doesn't have a Flame Orb because there's an Air Balloon and clicked Heat Wave. Is this special Flareon this week? Well, it's going to get paralyzed and have its balloon broken. I talk up the Follow Me Pachirisu, but Pachirisu has really been a menace with Nuzzle throughout the season so far. Tropius sets up Sunny Day, so Flareon will get a damage boost. If Tropius has Chlorophyll, it will get a further speed boost, which it could probably use right now. But Pelipper comes in to turn the sun off immediately, like Mr. Burns. And we see Tropius go for a Solar Beam, but it will not get a single turn activation because the rain has gone up. In Sun, of course, Solar Beam only takes one turn to execute. And not only is Tropius now committed to using Solar Beam this turn, locked in, but also that means it can't click Sunny Day this turn. And it's a sitting duck for, I mean, take your pick, Flying Terra Blast or a Hurricane or whatever. Liquidation wipes out Flareon. Quilava's last, it'll probably get wiped out by Liquidation 2. It gets to move first though under Tailwind, goes for a big Eruption, but it's into a water type and there's rain. So nobody takes very much damage from that. Pelipper actually just U-turns against Tropius. We see the Pachirisu come back in. Tropius fully paralyzed. Pretty unfortunate for it. It did move before, well, it didn't move. It had the opportunity to move before Crawdaunt there. That might have been another Sunny Day, and I'm sure United was covering for that by switching the Pelipper out. But yeah, we don't get to find out what Tropius is doing as it does drop that Flying Terra Blast, and I don't think Quilava has the power, especially in rain, to close this thing out. Terra Psychic Quilava, I truly have no idea what that's for in this matchup, unless it's just like boosted extra sensory, although I honestly, maybe that's it, although I don't know what extra sensory would be for in this matchup, but then Quilava just doesn't have a lot of coverage. That's the best guess I've got, because I don't really see a lot of defensive reason to run Terra Psychic into the Crawdaunt team. I don't know what's going on there, but maybe we'll find out in Game 2. Not in Game 1, as Quilava does drop to a Liquidation and Nuzzle other order. Nuzzle and Liquidation double up. Crawdaunt just swept through that game, aided quite a bit by Pachirisu spreading paralysis and Pelipper changing the weather. The Sunny Day Tropius not really able to deliver there. We'll see what adjustment the Alberta Arcanine find in Game 2. I would not be surprised to see the Darkspawn, because that, especially if you can activate Well-Baked Body has a much better chance of standing up to the Crawdaunt than anything else they've thrown at it so far, especially with Crawdaunt having shown the Terra Flying. But I mean, Pelipper, I could see Pelipper making Darkspawn's life hard, so we'll see how it goes. Pelipper actually leads this time with Pachirisu against Tropius, and there's the Darkspawn, but I don't see anything to activate Well-Baked Body right now. Darkspawn gets paralyzed. It has a Rocky Helmet. Okay, Pachirisu takes a chip. Big Icy Wind from the Pelipper. Of course, double super effective into Tropius. Does a little bit less than half, but it does a lot of damage. Chips Darkspawn as well. Tropius just sets Tailwind, but there's just so much speed control on the United side that Tailwind is really not coming through. It's not really proving very valuable so far. If it's Chlorophyll Tropius, and I'll just leak that I saw the paste and I'm pretty sure it isn't, then maybe Sunny Day would have been more helpful while the Pelipper is stuck on the field and can't, would have to switch out and back in to reset the weather. But I don't know, it's an awkward position. What happened? Darkspawn used Yawn to make Pachirisu drowsy. Okay, forcing Pachirisu out is not the worst thing, but you still have to be able to deal with whatever comes in. As we see, it's Nuzzle Magnet, the Rhydon. That's a funny nickname. They actually could use Pachirisu to boost their own Rhydon special attack, although, like, to what end? I don't know why they do that. We get another Icy Wind from the Pelipper. Is it a choiced Pelipper? I think the only move it clicked last game was U-turn. And the speed interactions are, with all the Tailwind and Paralysis, I'm getting a little bit lost in the speed interactions. It could be Scarf Pelipper. Could it? No, it's slower than the Pachirisu, so it's not Scarf Pelipper. But it could be choiced. Anyway. But choice what, then? It wouldn't be banded. I doubt that was Specs Icy Wind damage. Okay, I'm gonna say it's not choice Pelipper. I don't remember whether this paste is available for me to find later. Anyway. Tropius does set up the Sun here. Darkspawn yawns the Pelipper. Of course, when you force the Pelipper out, then eventually it'll come back in and reset the Rain. But for now, Tropius gets to take advantage of Harvest. That's what ability it has this week. You double up on the Citrus Berry recovery. Pachirisu comes back in next to its Nuzzle Magnet friend. We see Rhydon go for Terra Dragon, take that Solar Beam very nicely. And Darkspawn's just spamming Yawn so far. Rhydon's going to get forced out, but I mean, the Applin are taking damage and they're not doing a ton back. Tropius gets paralyzed here as well. Yeah. So the Pachirisu is still spreading paralysis, and there's still a Pokemon we don't know in the back. I would guess it's probably the Crawdaunt setting up to sweep, and Darkspawn is going to go down here to a Rock Slide. It just clicked Yawn a bunch of times. I mean, the Rhydon is actually going to go to sleep here, but it gets the KO on Darkspawn, so there's no more Yawn after that. It also gets big damage into Tropius. There goes all that Citrus Berry recovery. Well, the berry's actually coming right back because the Sun's still up. Harvest is a cool ability when you can pull it off. Quilava comes in, but Pelipper is here to turn off the Sun once again. Take that Eruption, no problem, along with Rhydon. Tropius fully paralyzed again. I think that's like 3 times now across the entire set. It does get its berry back, so that's something. We see I thought the Quilava might be scarfed, but we do see it go for Protect here, as Tropius disrupts to a Hurricane. Rhydon stays asleep. Quilava not really accomplishing anything with that Protect, unfortunately. We see the Flareon come in, and it is indeed Crawdaunt in the back. Terra Grass Flareon can actually stand up to that Crawdaunt pretty well. I mean, of course, Crawdaunt was unable to Terrestrialize because the Rhydon already has, but in any case, Crawdaunt switches in just to drop immediately to a Grass Terra Blast, so that's a good play from the Applin, getting rid of a massive threat that seemed to be setting up to win the game. But beating the Pelipper, well, I mean, we'll see how it takes a Grass Terra Blast maybe. Of course, Pachirisu will come in here. It has the opportunity to paralyze the Flareon, but instead it clicks Follow Me. It takes a Grass Terra Blast, but yeah, that gives Rhydon an opening for a Rock Slide, which crits the Flareon. Flareon not weak to Rock right now, but it takes massive damage, as does Quilava. Pachirisu lands a Nuzzle, taking the pair on Quilava. I do feel like there is a non-zero chance that Flareon wins this game, so I wonder whether it would be better to take the pair into that Pokemon, but maybe the Rhydon has a guaranteed hit attack here. High Horsepower and Rock Slide both can miss. I feel like if there's any way the Applin get back into this game, it's the Flareon just knocking things out and dodging attacks where it needs to. But we'll see. Pachirisu takes the pair into Quilava. We do see the extra sensory on Quilava, so I guess that is what the Terra Psychic is for. Does some damage to the Rhydon, but doesn't quite knock it out. And we'll see the Pelipper come back in just in time to reset the rain. Weather Ball into Flareon. I guess we know the Pelipper is Hurricane, I guess. Same base speed as Flareon, though. So yeah, Flareon had outsped it. I wouldn't bet that Grass Terra Blast KOs from this range. Maybe with a crit. I don't know. I guess in the end it wasn't that important. Rhydon does drop to an extra sensory here, but Quilava is not going to beat Pelipper with this Weather Ball. Icy Wind, Hurricane, Weather Ball, U-turn. So maybe it specs Pelipper and it just did less damage than I'd expect to Tropius. It played like it was choiced. The move list is like it's choiced. But I don't think it's Scarfed because... Am I getting mixed up by priority again? No, Pachirisu used Nuzzle before Pelipper moved. So maybe it specs Pelipper and I'm just confused about damage. In any case, it won this game. Pendragon United improved to 4-0, right? Some real scary, some really scary teams this season, that's for sure. Anyway, next we got the Azure Bay Chatots taking on the West Coast Pincurchins. No Bastrodon setup mode from the Chatots this time. I'd honestly kind of gotten used to seeing that every week. We do see some other familiar faces. Drifblim and Thwacky are able to play their Grass Tree, Surge, Grassy Seed, Unburdened game. We could see setup stuff from Passimian or Floatzel, or even Alchemy, or Alchemy could be here to decorate its teammates. All of that is familiar, but there's no Bastrodon. Instead, we have Electabuzz, able, of course, to click... Elekid, baby Electabuzz, literally. Able to click Follow Me, maybe like Electroweb, help his teammates out. On the Pincurchins side, we see a lot of the usual mix of Pokemon. So they have a couple of different speed control options with the Talonflame and the Stantler, Tailwind, or Trick Room, I guess as they see fit. Some of the usual mix of strong attackers like Gengar, Tatsugiri, Golurk, Alolan Sandslash. I mean, this is pretty much what we've seen from the Pincurchins every week. Just a mix of strong Pokemon with dynamic speed control options. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes they break through the opposing team. That Dynamic Punch, No Guard Golurk can be pretty scary. Maybe that's why the Bastrodon isn't here, because it doesn't want to face that. Honestly, not impossible. Anyway, we get Talonflame Golurk leading against Drifblim and Thwacky. So the Drifblim gets to activate its Unburden right away. It should be faster than... Yeah, it would definitely be faster than anything else on the field. But of course, Talonflame does have priority flying type moves as long as it's at full HP. Golurk goes for Terra Dragon immediately. Talonflame will immediately lose that Gale Wings priority to a Fake Out from Thwacky. And there's an Icy Wind from the Drifblim. Golurk, of course, does not turn off its Ice weakness by turning from a Ground type to a Dragon type. But Icy Wind is not that strong. Drifblim is not that strong. It still does some pretty reasonable chip, but it's not a massive amount of damage. We don't see a speed drop on the Talonflame, so that does have a Covert Cloak, but that's also confirmed by it not flinching this turn. But again, that Brave Bird doesn't get priority because Gale Wings only cares about being at full HP. So the Fake Out doesn't flinch the Talonflame, but it does turn off Gale Wings. Mission still accomplished, I think, for the Thwacky, even as it drops to a Brave Bird here. And Golurk goes for Poltergeist, but again, I mean, this is what I was worried about when I brought Bayonet against the Walreins a couple of weeks ago. This is why I read Shadow Claw, even though the damage was pretty underwhelming. Poltergeist only works when the opponent has an item, and obviously this Drifblim doesn't have one because he used up his Grassy Seed. I don't know whether the Golurk will have any damage into Drifblim then, because of course Drifblim is immune to Ground, Stab, whatever it is. It's immune to Dynamic Punch. Maybe the Golurk has a Rock type attack, but we'll find out, I guess. Passimian coming in for the Chatots. Drifblim sets Tailwind, and Passimian knocks Talonflame right out with a Rock Slide. See, it has a Life Orb set. Golurk does have a Rock type attack. That Rock Slide does pretty good damage to Drifblim, not so much to Passimian. Golurk also showing a Life Orb. You see Tatsugiri come in, but the Talonflame never set Tailwind, and the Drifblim did, so Drifblim lands a big Shadow Ball into Golurk. Passimian will get a chance to attack now. Close combat, critical hit, knocks out Tatsugiri. What's Golurk doing back? The problem is the Golurk, its teammates keep dropping, and it doesn't have a good way to threaten both of these Pokemon at the same time. Rock Slide is probably its only way to damage Drifblim, but it doesn't do very much to Passimian. If it focuses on damaging Passimian, then whatever it uses, it probably has no damage into Drifblim. It does knock out Drifblim here, so that dilemma might be resolved. But it's getting pretty low on HP. 2 turns of Tailwind left. We see the Gengar come in here. Alchemy comes in, it just clicks Protect. Passimian goes for Rock Slide, knocks out Golurk. Big damage to Gengar. Gets knocked out back by Dazzling Gleam. And actually, Alchemy versus Gengar here, you'd think would favor Gengar, but again, there's still a turn of Tailwind left, and the Chatots haven't used their Terra yet, so we'll probably see the Alchemy's Terra type here. Oh, it's Terra Fairy. Okay, Gengar protecting through the last turn of Tailwind. It still looks pretty good for Gengar then, doesn't it? Shadow Ball? No Sludge Bomb? No Sludge Bomb. Interesting. It goes for Shadow Ball and it just doesn't do that much damage. And the Terra boosted Dazzling Gleam does a lot back to Gengar. Shadow Ball obviously won with a crit here, but it doesn't get it. And Gengar drops to the Dazzling Gleam. I thought Gengar had that, but Dazzling Gleam protects Shadow Ball. Don't know what the last move is. Granted, Gengar has a ton of options. There's an extremely varied move pool with a lot of useful moves. It could have something to disrupt Bastardon setup, like honestly even Curse, or maybe like Focus Blast or Will-O-Wisp even. I guess there are a lot of moves that it could have instead of Shadow Ball, or instead of Sludge Bomb. But yeah, presumably not having that definitely hurts it here, because I think it would have won if it had Shadow Ball. But Alchemy manages to clutch this one up. I just said it again. If it had Sludge Bomb, it would have won that game. Okay. So game 2. Yeah, I guess if you're the Pincurchins, the main adjustment is play the speed control game differently. The Chatots got Tailwind last game. The Pincurchins didn't get their own Tailwind, and they didn't get Trick Room. And they just got swept aside by Passimian, mostly, Alchemy at the end. But also there was that awkward position for the Golurk, especially, where it wasn't really able to threaten both Drifblim and Passimian at the same time. So maybe they can position the Tatsugiri differently to get spread damage out of that Pokemon that is neutral into both of those other two. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Trick Room game plan. I'm sure there's a Taunt somewhere on this Chatots team. I could see Thwacky running it, or Passimian I think gets Taunt. I could see Floatzel even running it. But I think you have to do something about the speed control if you're the Pincurchins here. Let's find out. Of course, once again, the Talonflame does not get Gale Wings if it takes a Fake Out from Thwacky, even through the Covert Cloak. But it still got a chance to move turn 1 last game. It's not like it got one-shot. There's not really much of a threat to one-shot it here. So if you have a Tailwind game plan that you can use, Talonflame should still be able to pull that off. And Stantler should be able to set Trick Room if it really wants to. But let's see what they've come up with here. It's Driftblim and Thwacky lead once again for the Chatots. So same lead as game 1 against Gengar and Talonflame. Okay, so is it Tailwind? Let's see. Talonflame gets faked out again. Takes an Icy Wind. Gengar gets his speed dropped. Talonflame goes for the Brave Bird and Thwacky again. I guess the other problem with the Tailwind mode is the Drifblim is clicking that Icy Wind turn 1. Talonflame not getting its speed dropped by that because of the Covert Cloak, but Gengar's speed is dropped and then kind of just lose the Tailwind head-to-head regardless. But yeah, the Talonflame made the same decision as in game 1 this time. Just taking out the Thwacky turn 1. We'll see if it pays off this time, and we'll see what Gengar goes for. It could be a big Shadow Ball into this Drifblim, because the Gengar does have Shadow Ball. I do know that. I just kept saying that instead of Sludge Bomb earlier. It is a big Shadow Ball. It does not knock out the Drifblim. Big damage, and a special defense drop that doesn't especially matter because that damage was so big. But Drifblim will get a chance to set Tailwind here, once again for Passimian, and neither of these Pokemon really wants to take a Rock Slide. Golurk can take a Rock Slide, but then it gets into the same kind of awkward position as before. Stantler could come in and intimidate the Passimian. We know that it doesn't have a clear amulet, but it probably has Defiant. The Stantler can't intimidate the Passimian. Passimian's abilities are Receiver and Defiant, and I don't think there's much reason for it to be Receiver here. Maybe... No, because you can't take advantage of Unburden with your Life Orb anyway. They can't intimidate the Passimian. Golurk is the only... I mean, maybe a Sandslash or Tatsugiri could take a hit, but Golurk is the Rock Slide switch in, and then Golurk struggles to deal with both these at the same time. Really well set up by the Chatots, but... yeah, I guess... Yeah, these two Pokemon are in danger. Oh, it's Terra Stellar Passimian. That Rock Slide's going to do extra damage. Very good protect from the Gengar, though. That means it will not take the Terra boosted Rock Slide. But once again, the Chatots got Tailwind and the Pincurchins didn't. There's the Golurk. Goes Terra Dragon immediately. Of course, that'll mean it takes more damage from the Rock Slide and the same amount from the Icy Wind. But there's no Rock Slide this time. It's knock off into Gengar. I guess Passimian had to make sure to get rid of that Gengar to take the most advantage of this positioning. Knockoff being disabled I don't think is going to be a big deal because, again, the Golurk, it can be hit by fighting type attacks now, as well as Rock Slide if the position makes sense. We'll find out what the last Pokemon is in a second. But actually, Golurk clicks Poltergeist into Passimian. Okay, big damage, but it doesn't KO. Passimian's still here under Tailwind. There's the Alolan Sandslash last Pokemon. Golurk takes a Shadow Ball. Passimian just rips a close combat into Sandslash. Golurk can knock Passimian out with a Poltergeist here. Or can knock both out with a Rock Slide. Fair enough. But does it beat the Pokemon in the back? I would think it's probably Floatzel or Alchemy. I don't think it's a Lekid in this position. And I don't think this Terra Dragon quarter HP Golurk is gonna handle it. We'll see. It's the Alchemy. It's Alluring Voice. The Alchemy had Alluring Voice and Dazzling Gleam. Does Golurk get Wide Guard? Maybe something on this team does. Doesn't matter. It activates a Throat Spray. I think that's what the answer is. Alluring Voice activates a Throat Spray, and then you get boosted spread damage with the Dazzling Gleam. But no need for it here, because Alchemy comes in with Tailwind still up. Golurk just drops. Really solid game plan from the Azure Bay Chatots, as we do see them pull off very similar plans 2 games in a row. Denying the opponent's Tailwind, setting their own up, and then Passimian breaking through enough for Alchemy to close the game out. It did get scary against that Gengar. I do think Shadow Ball wins game 1. I cannot believe I just did it again. I do think Sludge Bomb. I do think that... This move here, I do think this move, Sludge Bomb, wins game 1 for the Pincurchins if they have it, but even then it wasn't doing anything in game 2. Solid game from the Chatots in both of those games. And we go now to the Winchester Walreins, one of our 2 teams that have never yet lost a game, taking on Sinistcha. Some familiar stuff from the Sinistcha this week. No Alolan Muck, though. So no Power of Alchemy. Power of Alchemy. I can't speak tonight. Shenanigans to worry about. But the Scovillain is still here. Instead we see what looks like a harder Trick Room game plan. They have all their best Trick Room Pokemon. Slowking, Trevenant, Copperajah, and Hariyama. And then the Glimmet is here. I don't know if it'll be a Glass Cannon offensive set like last week. I actually do think that would make decent sense, because Rock-type damage is very threatening into a decent amount of the Walreins team. So if you can catch something with a big Power Gem, that can be helpful to setting Trick Room. But also, if they see something like this, actual not very ice-heavy mode here, then maybe it's just Rage Powder with Scoville and set Trick Room. Either way, looks like a Trick Room game plan from the Sinistcha and from the Walreins. Yeah, there's no Frostlass this time, which narrows down some of their options. The Sentret, you click Follow Me to maybe create setup opportunities for Fracture, Vaporeon, even Tauros. The Tauros could be bringing Intimidate, and of course only one of these gets a clear Amulet. The Abomasnow could set Aurora Veil, and that would go up before the opponent even manages to set Trick Room. So there are a few ways that they could try to stall out Trick Room turns, and then there's probably some kind of setup mode, but it's hard to tell at preview what it'll be, which is all the more to the Walreins' benefit. And then on top of that, there's the Zorua here to trick things. It could disguise itself as something relatively unassuming and maybe taunt a Trick Room setter, although a Scovillain and maybe with an offensive Glimmet, there are ways it could play around that. Anyway. What's this? Wait, what's going on in the chat? Oh, Robbie misread what breed of Tauros it was. I'm not sure at face value what difference that made here. I mean, I guess the Fire Tauros is more threatening into all of Trevenant, Scovillain, and Copperajah than the Water one is, so maybe there would have been more things to cover for it if they gotten that right, but that's kind of a funny mix-up. Anyway, we see Fracture and Vaporeon leading against Scovillain and Glimmet. I figured that these two were here to create openings for the Trick Room setters, so I expected to see one of them at the lead position, but I didn't expect to see both. Glimmet is just going to Terra Fairy immediately and go for a big Dazzling Gleam into Fracture, into both Pokemon, because it's a spread move. It actually one-shots the Vaporeon, which makes me think that might be a Zorua, because Vaporeon should take that better than Fracture does, although Fracture could have the Eviolite, but I think we're about to find out this is Zorua. Fracture gets knocked down to 3%. It is Zorua. It just drops. We don't get to find out this game what it does. Fracture drops to a Leaf Storm. So all that talk about how the Sinistcha would try to set up for Trick Room, this is what part of what makes this such a tricky team to deal with. That was what I saw at preview, that was what I focused on. Nope, just a big offensive lead with their 2 faster Pokemon that just outsped and blew up what the opponent led with. And then we'll probably see the Trick Room set up, if not in this game, later in the set, because it is still there and it is still scary. But you expect one thing, they throw something else at you, but then they still have that other thing to throw at you later. It's part of what makes this one of the teams that I've really had my eye on ever since the season started. Anyway, the other 2 Pokemon for the Walreins are Tauros and Vaporeon, and by the way, I will play the Sinistcha later this season. Tauros and Vaporeon. Tauros intimidates 2 Pokemon that probably don't care about that, but the real Vaporeon might find an opening to set up with Calm Mind if that's what it's trying to do, given that the Scoville has just weakened its own offense. Tauros goes straight for Terra Psychic. Interesting tech. I think makes decent sense to the Pokemon like Slowking and Hariyama. We see a Dazzling Gleam, and yeah, that does not do 100% to Vaporeon, it does 20%. Bit of a difference. Terra boosted Zen Headbutt. Good damage to the Scoville, and a double up with Scald knocks it out, so Vaporeon not going for Calm Mind. It looked like a pretty friendly position to it. Maybe it's not a Calm Mind Vaporeon. We see the Slowking come in now. Limit Dazzling Gleam. It's not doing a ton, but it is chipping these Pokemon down. Slowking takes a little more than half for Wild Charge. Vaporeon does go for the Calm Mind here, but Slowking, if it wants to set Trick Room, can do that, and it does. And Vaporeon is boosting its special defense now, but there's probably, well, guaranteed there's some threatening physical Pokemon in the back, because that's all they have left. We'll see how it plays out. Scald will finish off the Tauros. Vaporeon standing alone here. Of course, it probably has Water Absorb. What's this other ability? Hydration? Yeah, it has Water Absorb. It does knock out the Glimmet. And we see Copperajah last. Okay. Not as threatening as Trevenant. That Rock Slide actually doesn't do that much to Vaporeon. Slowking going for a normal Terra Blast again. Scald would actually heal Vaporeon. Apparently that's the other option that Slowking has. No Psychic or anything. Who knows what kind of Terra Blast that is when it's Terrastalized. But yeah, pretty underwhelming damage into the Vaporeon. But can Vaporeon do enough back? Scald does pretty good damage into Copperajah, but it does not get a burn. And Rock Slide into Terra Blast does enough to finish Vaporeon off. So really solid game there from the Sinistcha. Again, the faster aggressive lead when I'm sure the opponent was setting up to, or was trying to make sure to stop the Trick Room setup. Really dangerous stuff. And the later game Trick Room setup closes this one out. Very first Winchester Walreins game loss of the season, but the set is not over yet. We'll go here to game 2. We see Glimmet and Scoville leading once again. I'm honestly surprised to see that. Robbie often mixes up the leads from one game to another, but we do see the same 2 again. And we see what looks like the same 2 from the Walreins, Fracture and Vaporeon. Of course, last time the Vaporeon was actually Zorua, and then it got knocked out before it could show anything about its set. Let's see about this time. Glimmet going Terra Fairy, Vaporeon going Terra Fairy. Glimmet just drops to a first impression. Wow. Resisted. But I don't know Glimmet's defense stat or anything. It was a crit. But Glimmet does get one shot. It does get his Toxic Spikes up from taking that physical attack. Vaporeon, Fairy type, taking that Leaf Storm. And it is the real Vaporeon. It sets up a Calm Mind, but it did take a lot of damage. And now we see Trevenant come in. Fracture switching out to Tauros. Tauros will get poisoned by the Toxic Spikes. It will intimidate the Trevenant. Scoville and go for Rage Powder, redirecting an Ice Beam, and surviving an Ice Beam crit. So imagine if that hadn't crit, Scoville would be pretty cozy here. As Trevenant sets up the Trick Room, and it looks like, I mean, it looks still pretty decent for the Sinistcha, right? Vaporeon is low, Tauros is poisoned, whatever's in the back will be poisoned when it comes in, including the Fracture. And the Trevenant has gotten the Trick Room set up. Granted, Scoville's not threatening much damage, but there's still something else at the back that will be. The Rage Powder. Vaporeon tanks a Wood Hammer. Maybe Trevenant isn't as powerful as I thought. Obviously, it's not super effective, but Vaporeon took so much from that Leaf Storm. Not so much from the Wood Hammer. It does survive. Tauros knocks out Scoville, and Vaporeon gets an Ice Beam into Trevenant. It doesn't KO, but it does a lot of damage. Trevenant has a Citrus Berry. It could have Harvest, but if it does, it does not. Did it have Harvest? Did we see Frisk? It could have Harvest, but if it does, it doesn't recover the berry here. Slowking is the last Pokemon. That's obviously very threatening to Tauros, and everything's threatening to Vaporeon right now. Tauros protects around a Scald. Vaporeon will drop a Poltergeist. You see it has a Mental Herb. That's what its item is. Trevenant does get its berry back here and get some more recovery. So looking pretty good for the Sinistcha. Abomasnow is the last Pokemon for the Walreins. It gets poisoned. Tauros drops with Scald. Abomasnow, we see has the Life Orb, but it actually takes that Poltergeist pretty well. I'm becoming convinced that Trevenant's attack stat is lower than I think, as Abomasnow's Blizzard knocks out Trevenant. And actually, yeah, the Trevenant not doing as much damage as I anticipated has created an awkward spot for the Sinistcha, because now they're down to just Slowking against two very threatening Pokemon, and the Slowking has only shown Scald and Terra Blast for damage. It can't Terra, because Glimmet already did, so we still don't know what its Terra type is. It's just a little baby normal type Terra Blast, and I don't think it's standing up to this Life Orb Abomasnow, much less the Fracture. So, for all that I said, that position I thought looked bad for the Walreins. I think I was kind of sleeping on the Fracture still lurking in the back. We actually saw First Impression just knock out Slowking there. That First Impression hitting so hard. Folks, I don't think this is a Dragon Dance Fracture. But yeah, Trevenant's attack stat just has to be lower than I think. That's the takeaway from that one. So, the early game Vaporeon setup created some openings for the Walreins in Game 2, but also the Life Orb Abomasnow in the back. And just switching the Fracture out and having that First Impression later made sure they were threatening a lot of damage all the time. And of course, unlike the Zoroa mode in Game 1, this one didn't just fold immediately against Glimmet and Scovillain. So I don't think you go back to that a third time if you're the Sinistcha, but for all that I've talked up these strong Trick Room Pokemon, they really haven't shown that they have enough damage to win a game without that aggressive lead that we saw in Game 1. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Hariyama in Game 3, because that should be able to threaten more damage than Copperajah, Trevenant, and Slowking do. But yeah, now that Reckless Trico, I didn't say the thing, did I? Now that Reckless Trico, who will upload a first-person perspective of this set on the channel Reckless Trico, which I will link in the description, now that they know about the Glimmet Scovillain lead, honestly, we'll see whether the Sinistcha have enough to win this without that, or without being able to catch them by surprise with that. We do see Trevenant leading with Hariyama this time against Fracture and Tauros. Hariyama getting intimidated immediately. Probably wanting to get his Flame Orb, though. It does fake out into Tauros. Of course, it's not worried about taking a First Impression, but instead it takes a big Dragon Claw. That does a lot of damage. Trevenant, though, free to set the Trick Room. Hariyama does not have a Flame Orb. I guessed wrong on that. Trevenant showing Will-O-Wisp now, burning the Fracture. That could be huge this game, but Hariyama's -1 close combat doesn't do a whole lot of damage to Tauros. Trevenant just drops to a Flare Blitz. That Fire Tauros might really make a difference after all. Burned Fracture, big damage into Hariyama with that unburned Dragon Claw turn 1, and it has enough to get the KO here on turn 2. So the Sinistcha got their Trick Room set up this game, but it's the Walreins that are blowing up their opponent within the first couple turns. We'll see what the Sinistcha have in the back to make up for that. We see the Copperajah, we see the Slowking. All the Trick Room Pokemon came to this one. The Slowking is now able to Terastallize this time, so maybe we'll finally find out what that Terra Blast is supposed to do. Fracture switches out to Vaporeon. Tauros protecting to get through, well, yeah, to get through this turn. Not just drop immediately and make things easier for the opponent. We do see a normal Terra Blast from the Slowking. Once again, Fracture pivoting in for Tauros. Tauros, I guess, preserving that Intimidate to have available into Copperajah. As Rock Slide and Terra Blast are wearing Vaporeon down, Copperajah takes a Scald, but no burn. Last turn of Trick Room, though. Rock Slide misses Fracture. Chips Vaporeon. Terra Blast knocks out Vaporeon, but the Walreins have gotten through the Trick Room, and they still have the Tauros at low HP, but able to come in and outspeed both of these. Copperajah all the way down to 1% after that Fracture low kick. I'm sorry, is this Fracture burned? I'm not really noticing based on what it's doing to these opposing Pokemon. Copperajah protects, but Slowking takes a big Wild Charge. Tauros will knock itself out with the recoil, and Slowking will have an opportunity, I think. I think Slowking will have an opportunity here to set Trick Room, but these Pokemon are really being worn down. Granted, the Walreins only have one of their Pokemon in the back, and the Fracture is... Well, again, the Fracture is burned, but you could have fooled me based on the damage it's doing to Pokemon like Hariyama and Copperajah. Last Pokemon for the Walreins is the Abomasnow. It goes Terra Ground immediately. Better hope they didn't click Scald into it, but then why would they? It hasn't revealed its Terra type before now. Certainly takes that Heat Crash nicely from Copperajah. Terra Blast into Fracture does not KO. Slowking Drops to an energy ball despite the Rindo Berry. That wild charge damage from the fire-type Tauros making a real difference there. And Fracture, despite being burned for most of this game, will claim, I think, a second KO this game. Tauros knocked out Trevenant, I think. But yeah, I don't know what kind of attack drop we're talking about with this burn, but Fracture claims another victim. And although they did finally drop a game, finally, at about the halfway point in the season, the Winchester Walreins do improve to 4-0. And now, we do go straight from that to the other team at the top of the table, the Ontario Minccinos, taking on the new look Southern-style Grovyles. We will not find out this week what the Alolan Graveler does, but Medicham and Masquerain are here. They have the Indeedee setting Psychic Terrain. They can do Calyrex Psy Spam if they want, and Medicham also can get like a boosted, what does it run, Zen Headbutt? They can get that in Psychic Terrain. The Masquerain is here. Honestly, if it can set up with Quiver Dance, it could be interesting, but I'm not sure how it does that in this matchup. And we see Grovyle and Charmeleon. Maybe they'll go for the Pledge combo. I don't know. On the Minccinos side, we see pretty much the same Pokemon as usual. So they have Politoed able to set Rain, boost its own damage, and Clawitzer's own damage. There's Mimikyu able to set Trick Room so that it and Clawitzer can underspeed opponents and do big damage. Mimikyu can set up a Swords Dance if it wants. It's hard to shut down the options that it brings to the table because of Disguise. Gothorita and Torracat can both give them Fake Out pressure. Gothorita also gets Shadow Tag so they can run a Parastrap mode with Politoed. Furret has Redirection with Follow Me. We know what this does at this point. Will this be the team that figures out this Clawitzer and finally shuts it down? Let's find out. Okay. I think somebody accidentally challenged with open team sheets or something. That's all this is. No big deal. We see Indeedee and Masquerain leading against Clawitzer and Gothorita. Psychic Terrain is up. And Indeedee clicks Fake Out in Psychic Terrain. Honestly, I used to do that more often than I'd like to admit. It's really cruel of Game Freak to give Indeedee such a good and tempting move that is made useless by its own ability. Who are these? I don't know. But anyway. Yeah, Fake Out in Psychic Terrain. It's more likely than you think. But Masquerain sets Tailwind. Indeedee takes a big Dark Pulse, not quite KO'd, but the Expanding Force for Gothorita makes sense into opposing Psychic Terrain setter. There's a lot to Masquerain. Finishes off Indeedee. Indeedee out of here without really accomplishing anything. We do see Medicham come in the Psychic Terrain. We see Terra Psychic. This is going to be a massive Zen Headbutt. No, it's Expanding Force Medicham. What is Medicham's special attack stat? I don't know, but apparently enough to do more than half to Clawitzer here. And then drop to a Dark Pulse because you turned off your fighting typing. That's a bit of an oops. The Minccinos also set up Trick Room with Gothorita, so now we have Masquerain and Charmeleon in Tailwind in Trick Room, and I think they're just going to get KO'd. Now Clawitzer are actually switching out to Politoed. I didn't see that coming. So no KOs this turn on the Grovyle side, as Gothorita just misses. But Masquerain clicks Tailwind. Masquerain has used Tailwind every turn? Is it choice locked? Anyway. I was wondering why the Masquerain didn't seem to be doing anything. I just missed this action turn 2, I think, but I don't know if it's choice locked. We don't get a lot of information from turn 1 because Indeedee used a priority move, Masquerain. Both opposing Pokemon were slow. Could be Scarf Tailwind, but then you have to pivot it out. But in any case, once that Trick Room went up, I think that one was pretty much over. The Terra Psychic Medicham is interesting for sure in Psychic Terrain, but what is Medicham's special attack stat? That's not something I've thought about in a long time. Anyway, what could do some significant damage with Expanding Force into a whole bunch of Pokemon that don't resist Psychic, except the Gothorita, is the Calyrex. So will we see Calyrex in Game 2? That could be fun. We get Gothorita and Clawitzer against Indeedee and Grovyle. I always want to see the Calyrex because it's the only restricted Pokemon that was... It's not the only one that was legal in this draft, but it is the only one that was drafted. Nobody drafted Cosmog. Honestly, I thought there was a non-zero chance that somebody would draft Cosmo M, but that didn't happen either. So I'm always just eager to see what the Calyrex will do whenever it shows up. Don't know whether it came to this game yet. We do see Indeedee and Grovyle leading against Clawitzer and Gothorita. Whereas Gothorita will also not be able to fake out the opponents in Psychic Terrain, so Grovyle could conceivably get some damage into Clawitzer or something if it wants right now. We see Terra Dark on the Clawitzer. Grovyle just goes for X-Scissor into Gothorita. A whole lot of damage. Gothorita, of course, Gothorita doesn't have to be carrying the Eviolite. Torracat could be, but I think it's pretty reasonable to put on Gothorita on this team. And also, Grovyle's probably not that strong. I don't know why the X-Scissor did the damage it did, but it wasn't a lot of damage. Indeedee protects around the Dark Pulse. Grovyle actually takes that Expanding Force pretty well. That's probably where the Eviolite is on this side. I guess you don't need Unburden in this matchup because the opponent runs very slow teams. So yeah, there's not that much loss by not having Psychic Seed Grovyle. Anyway, Grovyle, Terra Grass, Seed Bomb, big damage. Medium damage into Gothorita. And we see the alluring voice from the Indeedee. That was a crit into Clawitzer. It did good damage, but no, it is female Indeedee. It doesn't hit as hard as the male one. Life Orb, female Indeedee. Nice alluring voice crit into Clawitzer. Maybe Grovyle can pick things up and finish that off next turn. But it won't be Indeedee able to do that as it does drop to Dark Pulse, and actually Grovyle drops a single target Expanding Force. In the back, we see Charmeleon and Medicham. Unfortunately, no Calyrex in Game 2. Unfortunately for me, because I just want to see Calyrex. Charmeleon setting up with a Swords Dance. That could be scary if it gets a chance to attack, but I mean, it's up against big threats here, and the Medicham probably doesn't have another spread move besides Expanding Force, which the Clawitzer is now immune to. So I hope Charmeleon... Like, the Charmeleon could take a lot of damage and get knocked out before it gets to use this attack boost, but let's see. There's the Expanding Force from Medicham. Clawitzer's immune. Gothorita resists. Not much damage. Medicham didn't Terra this time, so it does survive a Dark Pulse. But then the Expanding Force from Gothorita knocks out Medicham. Does a lot to Charmeleon, but Charmeleon was not KO'd this turn, so Charmeleon will get a chance to attack something. The problem is all 4 of the opponent's Pokemon are still there. Charmeleon goes for Iron Tail. I didn't see that move coming, to be honest. I guess it hits Mimikyu for good damage in rain. That's something, but it does drop to a Dark Pulse. And the Southern Style Grovyles. What is this? Did I watch these out of order? One second. Did they play a best of 1 and then start a best of 3? I think that's what they did. I don't know what happened with the challenge here. I think this is game 2. And that should mean that despite these timer notifications at the bottom here, the Southern Style Grovyles were not the team to solve the Clawitzer. I do think the Medicham is a really interesting pickup for this team. I think it brings a lot to the table. I don't know that Expanding Force was the best set available for it, but I think that Medicham can certainly be very scary for their future opponents, including me, down the line. But for this week, the Ontario Minccinos continue their unbeaten streak, 8-0 in games, 4-0 in sets. Not a single opponent has ever beaten them at the halfway point in the season. There's still half a season left for someone to do it, and I will play them eventually. I'll play both of these teams before the season is over. But for now, the Ontario Minccinos guaranteeing after this week sole possession of first place. And that would be a great note to end on, but there's still one more. The Big Mode Bellibolt taking on the Hisuian Houndstones. The Houndstones still chasing their first win, even though they've looked pretty solid in multiple weeks. They've been right there in it. I think in every set they've played. I'm honestly kind of surprised that they're winless so far, but they are. And they have a tough opponent that they have to beat if they're going to get a win before the halfway point. The Big Mode Bellibolt undefeated so far. Not bringing the Bellibolt this week, but we do see some familiar faces like Oranguru and Houndoom that can do big... Well, Houndoom can do big damage into a lot of these Pokemon. Actually, there's really good coverage into this team with a couple of Psychic types, Bug, Ice. Oranguru doesn't do so much big damage, although it could be a threat to Flamigo and Salazzle if they try to start any shenanigans. So actually, Oranguru and Houndoom complement each other really well in this matchup. But and Guru also playing that great support role for offensive Pokemon like Houndoom, and also this Cramorant, which we've seen put in work in multiple weeks, and also has a lot of good coverage into the opposing team. There's the Grand Bull, which can intimidate Piloswine. It can't intimidate Flamigo if it has Scrappy. It can intimidate Co-Star Flamigo. But it has other tools like Snarl into Indeedee and Slowbro. Could maybe shut down some size spam stuff. The Growlithe is here with its own potential Intimidate. And then the Ditto, of course, the wild card. It could turn into anything. Any of these 6 things. On the Houndstone side, we see possible Trick Room game plans with Slowbro, Piloswine, maybe Indeedee. We see possible size spam with Indeedee and Slowbro. We see a couple of possible Tailwind setters and a fast support / offense Pokemon. Can do a few different things in Salazzle. Vivillon could run a support set. Vivillon could try to set up. That's tricky into Houndoom and Cramorant, and there's no Bellibolt, but they would have had to prep for one. But yeah, a few ways they can approach this. We'll see what happens. Houndoom and Growlithe leading. Interesting. Against Flamigo and Piloswine. No Intimidate on the Growlithe. It's beat up Justified. Oh, I paused just too late to claim credit for thinking of it. But it is Flamigo with the wide guard covering for probably a Heat Wave, but there's no Heat Wave because it's beat up and Justified. The Growlithe is getting attack boosts from the Houndoom's beat up. I did not see this one coming. That's a really cool bring. Piloswine Earthquake knocks out Houndoom, but not Growlithe. Growlithe going for big damage. Raging Fury. Raging Fury is like Outrage, right? I think. It's a fire type Outrage, so you don't get to choose the target. I thought maybe the Growlithe would annihilate this Piloswine with a big fire type attack. I don't think you get to choose your target with Raging Fury. It one-shots Flamigo, but given that we saw it slower than the Piloswine, it might have liked to get rid of that Piloswine if it had the chance. That said, maybe Cramorant will get rid of the Piloswine. We do see it come in here, and Indeedee on the other side. But Indeedee's faster. Expanding Force will knock out the Growlithe. It was so cool to see that +4 attack Growlithe, but it is going to drop now. Cramorant with a big Throat Chop knocks out Indeedee with a crit. These teams are just trading blows. What are the last Pokemon? Slowbro and Ditto. Ditto will turn into Slowbro. Cramorant will be the fastest Pokemon now. We see both Slowbro terrestrialize. Ditto into the Fairy type and the real Slowbro into the Dark type. Terra Fairy Ditto. For what? I'm not sure. Why? I don't know why it's Terra Fairy this week. Panda, if you're in the comments, let me know why it's Terra Fairy Ditto this week. I guess Flamigo has been one of the key Pokemon for the other side, so that's throughout the season, so that's something. But anyway, Cramorant goes for Dive. Apparently, it's at low enough HP to activate Gulp Missile Pikachu form. I don't remember what the threshold is for that. Maybe it's half. It does avoid an Icicle Crash from Piloswine. Slowbro with a Shadow Ball into Ditto. Neutral damage, but Ditto expanding Force back. Slowbro's immune. Does some good damage to Piloswine. Piloswine protects around the dive. It'll take no damage from that. If there's another Expanding Force, then the Bellibolt will accomplish no damage this turn, but instead it's Scald into Slowbro. Pretty good damage, and it gets the burn. Total of half with the burn. Cramorant diving again, avoiding an Icicle Crash, but Ditto will drop to an Expanding Force from Slowbro. Dive, not quite knocking out the Slowbro, and they were probably covering for another Protect from the Piloswine, but Piloswine just attacks this time. I think probably reading that target. Landing an Icicle Crash into Cramorant. It'll get paralyzed by the Gulp Missile, but that doesn't matter because the game is over. Really fun offensive game in Game 1. Will the Bellibolts find the adjustments to turn it around in Game 2? I would not be shocked to see the Justified Growlithe left behind this time. It was really cool. I was excited to see it, but it didn't accomplish very much. But let's see. We get K. We get Gramble leading with Ditto. Ditto leading this time against Salazzle and Piloswine. Ditto will turn into Salazzle. Ditto will turn into Piloswine. I knew the right thing, but I said the wrong thing. But it takes a fake out. Did the Gramble not have Intimidate? Oh, they both have Oblivious. That's funny. Yeah, okay, Intimidate. This team does not care about Intimidate then. Slowbro also gets Intimidate. Quite possibly a majority of these Pokemon are immune to it. Anyway, Piloswine goes for high horsepower and a Gramble. Gramble will hit back with a close combat into Salazzle. I wonder whether that was a misclick, because it's resisted by Salazzle, but Piloswine's weak to it. Maybe we'll find out in the chat. Don't know if that was a misclick or not, but Granbull swapping out to Cramorant there. Maybe they thought Salazzle would switch out because it was threatened by the Piloswine. They were trying to cover. No, that doesn't work because cover what? If you have Play Rough, that's stronger into everything. Except Piloswine, but Piloswine's right here. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on it. Cramorant comes in, takes a Sludge Bomb. But not an Earthquake. Salazzle will drop to Ditto's Earthquake. And Didi coming in now. Expanding Force takes out both of these. Of course, this Piloswine doesn't have the benefit of an Eviolite that it's presumably not holding because it's a Ditto. This Piloswine's a lot bulkier for that reason. But yeah, we saw that the Didi was relatively fast in this matchup. It does just knock out both Pokemon. Now Granbull can come back in with Houndoom. It does get to Intimidate Indeedee. It doesn't really matter. Indeedee switches out to Slowbro. Houndoom cooking the Piloswine with the Flamethrower. Big damage, but not a KO. And dropping a high horsepower. Can Granbull pull this one back? We see a crunch into Slowbro. Honestly, the damage isn't great. And there's a Rocky Helmet. We see the Terra Fairy Granbull. We see the Terra Dark Slowbro once again. Interesting choice in front of this Granbull, but I guess it hasn't shown Play Rough and it has shown Crunch. We see now Rock Slide from the Granbull. Could be Assault Vest Granbull, but yeah, it's just not doing enough damage. And drops to Scald. So, fun offensive game plans on both sides. But the Hisuian Houndstones do finally get that well-deserved first win of the season. I know that behind the scenes, Panda, coach of the Bellibolts, had an extremely busy week. And honestly, I gather barely had time to play at all. It happens, right, with Draft League. People have busy lives outside of the league. So I know some of the prep was not necessarily where it could have been under different circumstances, but I don't want to take anything away from the Hisuian Houndstones. They've been knocking on the door of that win for weeks now. They've been right there in it every week. Like I said, I was surprised that they were 0-3. Now they're 1-3, and they may yet climb into playoffs. It is not too late. But there we go. An exciting week all around. Some really fun sets, some really creative techs. Once again, it really does feel like a lot of coaches are getting comfortable with their drafts. A shake-up to the league as the Southern-style Grovyles have a very different draft now to get comfortable with. And we do finally have the tie at first place broken for now, as the Ontario Minccinos are undefeated in games at the halfway point of the season. But, of course, there's a lot still to come. A lot still can happen. Halifax Masquerade Men, 500 at the halfway point. Just under if you count game differential, because we're like 2-2, -1. Still looking to make that playoff chase ourselves. More to come on that next week as we head into the second half. See you there.